It's amazing to think that one of our most precious tools is taken for granted, that tool being language. But imagine a world where we couldn't explain to another person how much we love that person, where danger was, or even explain to them where to get food. However, before we can dwell deeper in this scenario, we need to understand where the tool of communication came from. And personally, I find it amazing that language as we know it
If you want some, I'll give it you. You want to do with me?
came from this, and from the most boring one, this. But where did this actually all come from? Today scientists have their bet on the Big Bang. Just as a side note, the Big Bang didn't make an audible noise, but I wanted to put a jump scare somewhere in here. Anyway, everything that we have today is made from atoms and energy. The lightest atoms were first created during the Big Bang, and the heavier atoms were later made in stars, and all the energy we have today is from the Big Bang and has been recycled for billions of years. The truly interesting part, in my opinion, was when things started to settle down after the Big Bang. Our home, planet Earth, first began forming around 4.6 billion years ago, around the same time as everything else in our solar system. Our solar system was formed from a gigantic cloud of space debris that was being brought together by the force of gravity. After some time, the Earth began to cool down from its molten state. This cool down allowed water to form on the planet. Water forming on this planet was essential to life forming. In fact, the oceans of Earth was where life first started in the form of microscopic single-celled prokaryotes. These first creatures were the epitome of biological simplicity. They existed for a long time, simply consuming energy and then expelling waste in the form of methane. Jumping ahead by several million years, we see the first signs of truly advanced life, not just multicelled organisms. Even though we don't currently know what the first advanced life form was, it was probably similar to the current living creature called the comb jelly, which is shown on the screen right now. From here is when life truly began to sprout into the marvelous complexity we cherish today, and with that marvelous complexity came the inherent need to communicate. Since we obviously can't travel back in time to see what were the first creatures to communicate, or in reality how they communicated, we can guess that they probably express ideas in the way that most people imagine primitive creatures communicating, through body motions or vocal indications of behavior. In fact, the use of either body motion or vocal indication or combinations of the two have generally stayed in use by creatures in the animal kingdom for millions and millions of years. But one important form of communication is used by microscopic particles such as bacteria. The way that they communicate is called quorum sensing, which is when bacteria send chemical signals to each other in order to synchronize movements or to survey the environment. All this is leading up to us and how we began to speak in such amazing and complex ways. Even though it's hard to imagine humans communicating in any other way aside from language, there was a time where we communicated by special grunts and body movements. Linguists such as Max Muller say that we first began speaking by imitating animal sounds, and then we added special meaning to those sounds in order to communicate basic ideas. This, however, is just speculation. Another famous theory is the mother tongues hypothesis. Here it's suggested that language came from mothers and their children trying to talk to one another, and as mother and child began to speak, so did other adults around them. As language began to spread among people, it also began to evolve into more complex forms that we can recognize today as being complex speech. Amazingly, complex language didn't only form in certain parts of the world. It can be seen as a human common trait displayed everywhere around the world by different people. But the separation of people is what caused there to be so many different languages in the world today. In fact, as a low estimate, there are thousands of different languages spoken in the world today, varying from spoken languages, distinct dialects, or sign languages. But one of the most important languages were the languages that were spoken in the area known today as the Fertile Crescent. Even though this region had many different types of languages, I'll give you a few examples such as the Semitic languages and the Sumerian languages. What's so important about the languages in this region is that these regions that were used in the cradle of civilization soon gave to a brand new form of communication, written communication, which massively changed humanity because we were then able to transmit ideas down many generations instead to a single person. The invention of written languages improved our and to make a long story short, improved collective learning through written and spoken language gave way to countless inventions that improved our way of life. We went from small nomadic tribes to farming villages to agrarian civilizations and all the way to the modern cities of today, all because of language. Now we can answer the question at the beginning of this presentation: what would the world be like without language? Frankly, it's hard to say. If we were to pair up communication and language as being more or less the same thing, then you could say that complex life wouldn't have gone along very far. Without basic communication, complex life wouldn't have been able to thrive the way it has. Without human language, you can say that we simply wouldn't have been where we are today. Language was one of the key reasons for our global dominance, and without it, we would have never reached the top.